Hello, and welcome to Creepycore and Folklore, the show about creatures, encounters, old tales, and myths. I'm your host, Iona Wayland, a dark fantasy author, mental health professional, and overall curious person. I want to join other spooky souls and hear about these unusual stories. Hello, spooky soul, and welcome to episode 56 of Creepycore and Folklore. I know I talked about it, I want to say it was 2 or 3 weeks ago now, but in one of the more recent episodes, I was talking about how my Babo and I went on a spooky stroll together. We get to bond, we get to explore. She always picks up a favorite rock and a stick. It's like a whole thing, which I love that for her. And she pokes at puddles if it's raining. She's a lot of fun. And she kind of walks until she drops. And I'm like, do you want to be in the stroller now? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay, but you're kind of melting, so I think it would benefit everyone if you climbed up in here. So I usually have to wrangle her into the stroller whenever she gets too tired, but she's definitely my little feral Babo, and she's so fun. But something that was really fascinating to me was that on our walk coming back home, from one side of the Appalachian woods to the other, we were on this little road, back road, not the Appalachian Trail this particular time, but just a road that's close to our house, and the owl swooped right in front of us completely soundlessly, and she was talking up a storm. I was listening to music. We were loud and obnoxious in the woods. We weren't being quiet. But if I had not been facing forward, just walking her in her stroller, I would have missed the barred owl that just silently swooped right in front of us. And afterward, both of us were like, ooh. We were both amazed. It was such a magical moment. But I haven't been able to get that experience out of my head. It was just such a weird, it just covered me in goosebumps. And I was just thinking about it so much. And then I thought, you know what? I should do an episode all about owls. And it's something that's been suggested to me by Heather, who is Heather Wildflower, if you want to look her up. And I did the Women in White episode about where we talk about why so many ghosts are show up as a ghostly woman wearing a white dress or a white shawl. And it was a really cool episode to do with her. And I thought that was a good suggestion. And she suggested it a while back. I want to say months ago. So it's really cool to be able to kind of dive into this topic today. But owls are very interesting. They have these nocturnal hunting habits. They're considered silent hunters, like I was mentioning, where they have very small bodies, but there are a lot of these very specific type of feathers that make them extremely light and absolutely soundless. And they're very intriguing. And there's across cultures and traditions worldwide, these birds have been a symbol of wisdom and mystery and had a lot of spiritual significance. So we're going to follow the owl into their lineage. So a very prevalent theme in owl folklore is their association with wisdom and knowledge. In ancient Greek mythology, the goddess Athena, the embodiment of wisdom, was often depicted with an owl as her companion. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, Athena has the barn owl specifically. They look like ghosts. I mean, look up a barn owl. It's ridiculous. Also, the Potu owl from South America is really funny looking, and they also look like ghosts. I think they're called ghost birds as well. They either look completely horrified and kind of like Beaker from the Muppets, or they're really scary to look at. There's no in between with the Potu owl. But back to Greek mythology. She has this owl companion, and the owl's ability to see in the dark and its sharp gaze have really been admired and linked to the pursuit of wisdom and insight. Then there's the guardians of the night kind of association where they represent vigilance and protection. In many indigenous cultures, specifically North American indigenous tribes, the owl was a sacred creature that provided spiritual guidance and also could sometimes warn of danger. Some tribes also associated the owl's hooting with messages from the spirit world or as omens of some sort of impending event. They're also frequently associated with transitions and transformation in folklore. For instance, in Egyptian culture, the owl was connected to the afterlife and served as a guide for souls on their journey. And similarly, in African cultures, owls are seen as messengers between the physical and spiritual realms. I think it's interesting how in some African groups, in indigenous tribes, and in Egyptian culture, which I mean is part of Africa, but still like a bit different. It's very north, so it has a totally different culture associated with it. That they have this connection between our world and the spirit realm. I think that's very interesting. Throughout history, owls have been considered harbingers of both good and bad fortune. So in some cultures, hearing an owl's hoot is believed to foretell an imminent death or misfortune, which is, we're very unfortunate then because I can hear barred owls and barn owls. And then there are these little like hooties. I don't remember which ones, which honestly, that makes me think of the Owl House. If you like animated shows and you don't mind watching a kid's show that's really super cute and has lots of magic and like witches and demons and stuff, I think you'd like the Owl House. And there's an owl on there that's both like cute and creepy cute. And his name's Hootie. And one of the things my husband can like brag about is that he can do Hootie's voice like exactly right. I'm like, please warn me before you talk like Hootie the owl. But unfortunately or fortunately, I always thought it was cool. We could always hear owls hoot at night. It's the way my husband grew up. He was told that how owls hoot is saying who cooks for you, because they go, who cooks for you, who cooks for you all. That's what they kind of sound like. And I'll play what a barred owl sounds like specifically. So that sound is from the JP Adventure Photo account on YouTube, and they uploaded the barred owl call, and I used that sound for this. But it's very like, it does kind of sound like who cooks for you, who cooks for you all. I just was taught hoot hoot, but you know, maybe the people who taught me animal sounds were a little boring compared to my husband's. But hopefully us hearing them all the time does not foretell an imminent death or misfortune. But then on the other hand, the presence of an owl during certain events such as weddings or births are seen as a positive omen, symbolizing protection and blessings. In Japanese folklore, the owl is associated with protection against misfortune and considered a good luck symbol. But then on the flip side, in European folklore, owls were feared as bringers of darkness and associated with witchcraft, which we're going to dive into a bit more in a second. But it's fascinating how the world of owl folklore shows these different symbolism, and they're kind of like the exact opposite of each other, whether it's representing wisdom and knowledge and serving as guardians of the night and messengers between realms, or that the owl kind of like foretells something bad or is considered a negative omen. It's fascinating that these two things are so opposite of each other. So looking at it specifically, the owl as otherworldly, we can go to some of the cultures we talked about before and kind of go a little more in depth with it. So in ancient Greek culture, of course, held a prominent place as Athena's kind of companion, but Athena represents a lot of stuff: wisdom, balance, justice. And she would not trust just anybody with her wisdom and to give her that wisdom and be that guardian of knowledge, intuition, and strategic thinking. And then, for instance, in an animal to be considered a spirit guide is not like, this is just real quick. It's tough to learn this stuff if you've done this before, but just letting you know that saying such and such is my spirit animal or whatever is a pretty like overly done appropriation of culture, specifically of indigenous cultures, because spirit animals are, it's a religion and it's a spiritual practice and faith, and if it's not your own and if you haven't gone through the necessary avenues, it's kind of asked that you do not say that certain things are your spirit animal, because that's not your belief system. And so it's easy, I think it's pretty easy not to use it. Be like, oh, I really resonate with this animal is better, in my opinion. In many Native American tribes, they're considered spirit guides and they offer wisdom and spiritual guidance. But in some tribes, specifically the Hopi and Apache, they're believed to warn of impending danger or bring messages from the spirit world, like we talked about before. And having that role of being a spirit guide, of being a spirit animal, and being able to connect with people who have passed or creatures in the spirit realm is extremely important and shows kind of a mysticism behind them. Same thing with Egyptian mythology, where specifically the barn owl is associated with the afterlife, and the presence of owls near tombs and burial sites signify protection and guidance for the souls that were deceased. And having the owl's ability to navigate darkness represented the safe passage of the souls to the realm of the dead. In Japanese culture, where owls are seen as symbols of luck and prosperity, actually the word for owl, which is fukuro, sounds similar to the word for no hardship or no poverty. And that leads to the belief that owls bring good fortune. That's why why owls are associated with good fortune. They're also depicted in East Asian cultures as wise and protective creatures. Especially in Japanese art, they're associated with good luck in business ventures and academic pursuits. And in various African cultures, they're revered as symbols of wisdom and connection with ancestors, which you know how connected I feel to my ancestors and how I try and rely on ancestral support for certain decisions or tough or good times in my life. And they are also believed to bring messages from the spirit world and guardians of secrets and hidden knowledge. This also leans into all these mystic type of references of like they're having this hidden knowledge and they transport ideas and deliver messages from the spirit realm. That kind of led for them to have owls associated with witchcraft. And it's a really entrenched and convoluted folklore and still holds up in popular culture. But the association between owls and witches can be traced back to ancient folklore and superstitions. Like in European folklore, owls were believed to be companions and familiars of witches and aided them in their magical practices and acted as their messengers. And this association may have arisen from the owl's nocturnal nature and like mysterious presence and that like ability to navigate the darkness. But here's where, man, I should have saved this for the conclusion, but I'm just going to tell you now. Here's my conspiracy theory. I think that anytime owls were revered in some way, and then that they were said to have connections with the spirit realm or hold, the hidden knowledge or occult knowledge or whatever, I think that the places that have more conversions from paganism or polytheism of some sort to Christianism or monotheism, I think that there's more of a negative connotation with the owl. I think that's where it came from because they, missionaries were trying to cast out the old ways and bring in the good ways of Christianity. Not all missionaries, but, a lot. And there was this fear mongering that would happen about old traditions or old folklore. And it was said to be almost like evil. So of course they would take like this very revered messenger. In my mind, this makes sense that you would try and change the outlook of something that you see as a positive thing or that connects you to ancestors or the spirit realm or whatever, and be like, oh, well, you can't trust that symbolism anymore. You can only trust the Christian symbolism or the monotheistic symbolism. And don't question that. Or if you question anything, question the old ways. So I think this is where it started being like, oh, that's witchcraft, that's evil. And I think this is where witchcraft and owls often got conflated. That's my conspiracy theory that I have in the back of my mind. That's kind of a pattern that I'm conflating from this and kind of speculating on, you know? So for instance, in indigenous tribes like the Lakota and Navajo, owls are revered as sacred and associated with spiritual wisdom, just like a lot of the other indigenous tribes that we've learned about together already. However, in European cultures, owls were often feared and linked to witchcraft due to their association with darkness and the unknown. There was also a huge literary play into this where they made this association between owls and witchcraft more solidified. So in Shakespeare's play Macbeth, the owl is mentioned in connotation with the supernatural, appearing as an ominous symbol during the dark and nefarious acts. And this literary representation helped reinforce the link between owls, darkness, and witchcraft in the popular imagination. Visual representations in like art and illustrations, media have perpetuated the connotation between owls and witchcraft. Owls are often portrayed alongside witches, and that enhances this association between these mysterious creatures and their witchy counterparts. There's also their presence in occult-themed movies, books, modern witchcraft imagery further cements this connection. But it's important to note that the association between owls and witchcraft is largely based on folklore, superstition, and cultural biases. These owls are not inherently linked to witchcraft, but rather these beliefs arose from a lack of understanding and fear of the unknown. Owls play vital roles in ecosystems as predators and have no direct connection to supernatural practices, even though they're very aesthetic and they're gorgeous, gorgeous creatures. So I think that it's really cool to see how owls are depicted, what they mean. I've also heard, I didn't see any of this in the research, but I've heard people tell me like maybe this is a more contemporary take on owls, but seen as like protection. It seems like in ancient folklore, they're seen as more like spirit guides, messengers, just like guiding a soul through the afterlife or to the afterlife, connecting you with your ancestors, kind of like a passageway, like a connection animal for you in the spirit realm. But in modern times, I know I was like, wow, my babo and I just saw a barred owl fly right in front of us. It was the coolest thing. And it was during the day, like, and we were being loud and obnoxious. Like, this is really incredible. What a cool experience. And a couple people were saying, oh, I think that means protection, like you're being protected or it's a good omen. So whereas the good omen can be linked back to ancient folklore, the protection was something that I didn't read about quite as much, but it's very interesting that that was a symbolic take by spooky souls that know about me and Babo's Appalachian adventures together. So thanks for listening to all the different interpretations of owls and symbolism and the folklore behind them. I'd love to hear what your experiences are with owls, if you have any, or what your take on an owl swooping right in front of you, what that would mean for you, especially depending on the type of owl it is too. And if you have any owl species that live close to you, I would love to hear about what kinds you can see. But thanks for tuning in, and I will talk to you next week. Thanks to all you spooky souls out there for listening to Creepy Core and Folklore. Follow on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok if you're looking for more uncanny content. If you have your own tales to tell, you can email creepycoreandfolklore@gmail.com. If you liked this, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, or tell a friend who might enjoy these stories to spread the word. If you're interested in dark fantasy, check out my Hollowverse series. Ashes is available now in paperback and ebook on Amazon and audiobook on Audible, and the sequel is underway. I'm Iona Wayland, and I'll see you next time.